The cursed and abandoned village of Wycoller, where history emerges with legend. The ancient English village of Wycoller sits sleepily in the Lancashire countryside, around 4 miles east of Colne Market town and close to the notorious Pendle Hill it resides. Today it forms part of a picturesque country park, popular with dog walkers and outdoor enthusiasts alike, but the village of Wycoller boasts a dark reputation. For here, tales of the supernatural are in abundance, traffic is banned, and terrifying ghosts are said to roam its deserted ruins. To make today's video, we travelled 80 miles from home to take a walk around this picturesque paranormal hotspot. We converse around its woodland landscape to find the place where the streets may seem abandoned, but the tales will tell us otherwise. Hello and welcome to the Wanderlust Way. In today's video we'll be visiting Wycoller village in the civil parish of Trawden, Lancashire. Filmed in the mid-October spooky season, we'll be exploring this old deserted place which many report to be haunted. We'll also learn how its peculiar reputation goes on to inspire Charlotte Bronte and her work. So please sit back, relax and try to enjoy the video. If you do enjoy it, I'd really appreciate a like and please subscribe to the channel to see more videos like this. Thank you. You would be forgiven for not noticing the forgotten village of Wycoller as you passed through the roads of the Lancashire countryside. Its existence almost as forgotten as its uninhabited buildings and moss-covered pathways. But it's still there, sleepy, unassuming, and now consumed by its natural surroundings. It's therefore the perfect place for a wanderlust soul like myself to explore. Hidden deeply amongst a thick wooded valley, through the rolling countryside and past the hustle and bustle of its neighbouring towns, you'll find Wycoller. Visitors are not permitted to drive here. Instead, you must leave your car on the outskirts and travel in on foot, making an arrival here especially entrancing. After meandering down the peaceful lane, you'll eventually come across the first set of buildings, a small cluster of pretty residential properties that remain the only evidence of modern human life in the village. The sound of babbling water can be heard in the distance. Here it flows through the brooks and underneath the ancient tumble-down bridges. You already feel like you've entered a nostalgic movie set, and that's not exactly a lie. For true film buffs may notice the similarities between Wycoller and some of the scenes from the 1970s film, The Railway Children.
That is beautiful. Okay.
At its peak, Wycoller's population was said to be just 350, and the majority of residents here earned an income through agriculture and weaving. However, with the invention of power looms in the 19th century, the majority of these weavers had no option but to relocate to nearby towns in order to find work. Over 35 homes became gradually abandoned, and by 1896, the majority of Wycoller was deserted, leaving the forest to slowly creep around its walls and swallow it up. There's no denying that the image of an abandoned hamlet is successful in firing up the imaginations of a creative soul. Fans of the famous Bronte family may be excited to learn that it was through Wycoller their feet did too walk. The literary Bronte family lived about 7 or so miles away in the parsonage at Haworth, their lives and work often shrouded by the stirring countryside around them. To learn more about the Brontes, you can find another video over on my channel. It is now known that Charlotte, Anne and Emily would use the backdrop of their everyday walks outside to inspire their literary genius, and Wycoller was no exception. Today it marks part of the Bronte Way, a 43-mile long-distance footpath that honours their lives. Fans of Charlotte's novel Jane Eyre may recognise one building in particular here in Wycoller, for the atmospheric ruin of Wycoller Hall was inspirational in Jane Eyre, where it became Ferndean Manor. In her book, Charlotte describes, "The manor house of Ferndean was a building of considerable antiquity, moderate size and no architectural pretensions, deep buried in a wood." She later describes the journey there. "So thick and dark grew the timber of the gloomy wood about it, Iron gates between granite pillars showed me where to enter, and passing through them, I found myself at once in the twilight of close-ranked trees. There was a grass-grown track descending the forest aisle between hoar and knotty shafts and under branched arches. The dominating presence in the village is no doubt the hall Charlotte speaks of in her writing. Known to us as Wycoller Hall, it is now Grade 2 listed and a scheduled monument. It is also the centre for the majority of the hauntings that take place here and a sought-out location for paranormal investigations. Built in the 16th century, Wycoller Hall was built by peers of the Hartley family. On his daughter's marriage in 1611, the ownership passed to the Cunliffe family of Hollins near Accrington. The last Cunliffe to own and live in the hall was known by the name of Henry. At the promising age of 21, Henry became squire. Youthful and ambitious, he began to extend and remodel it in the hope of attracting a wealthy wife of notable standing. Henry's additions would include a porch with ornate finials, a new range of mullioned windows, a large ancient-style fireplace, and a number of fine interiors. By the end of completion, Wycoller Hall contained all the grand offerings a home like this could expect. It was 3 stories high, containing drawing and sitting rooms, plus bedrooms upstairs. Behind the hall were the kitchens, and beyond that a courtyard complete with a coach house and stables. Henry, it is said, was a keen gambler, and evidence also remains of a cockfighting pit in what had been the garden. Unfortunately, Henry's forceful lifestyle saw him borrow money against the property to fund the extension. This, alongside his gambling addiction, would eventually curse the hall to its miserable downfall we see today. What was once an ambitious prized possession soon became a burden, and Henry died in 1818, both childless and penniless. With the hall and the family's finances in tatters, it was eventually dished out to creditors, with many of the materials plundered for nearby buildings. What do you think about reusing materials from a building with so much sadness? Is it smart resourcefulness or a superstitious risk? Let me know in the comments. Through the middle of the village and in front of the hall runs the stream, which is passed over by 3 ancient bridges. To any unknowing eye, these landmarks make for a beautifully quaint scene. But step back in history and you'll soon discover there is more to them than meets the eye. The ancient clapper bridge, although simple and unassuming, has remained a constant over the water throughout time. It has seen as much history in the village as some of the trees that surround it. Historians suggest it is over this very bridge that the Druids would cross to make rituals in the nearby grove. A human sacrifice or two was not uncommon practice. There's therefore a good chance the poor victim would be carried over this bridge on his or her last journey. Does this dark link to the past still hold ripples in the present? I'll let you be the judge of that. Reports do suggest, however, that hauntings and accidents are common around the bridge, including a tale from the late 18th century when a farmer's daughter slipped and fatally injured herself crossing the bridge. The Clapper Bridge is complemented by the Clam Bridge, another ancient monument thought to be over 1,000 years old and comprising of a simple single slab. Lastly, there's the postcard-perfect Packhorse Bridge, a charming 2-arch structure affectionately known as Sally's Bridge after a member of the Cunliffe family who were owners of the hall. All 3 bridges are Grade 2 listed and scheduled monuments. They are as important in the history of the village as the people and events. The stories and legends that surround Wycoller are both terrifying and enchanting. It's a supernatural hotspot, a place where some believe there is a thin veil between our world and another, and so we move on to the ghosts. The most famous ghost story of Wycoller has an almost Hollywood-esque reputation. Like any good movie plot, it's a tale that involves jealousy, rage, and not 1 but 2 ghosts. The phantom horseman and his desperate, screaming female victim. It's honestly like something straight out of Sleepy Hollow. If they made a movie about this place, it would no doubt star Johnny Depp. I can almost see him charging over the Packhorse Bridge now. The Phantom Horseman's story takes on a few versions, but the most popular one takes place on a dark and stormy night, as ghostly introductions like this tend to start. It centres around a man named Simon Cunliffe, squire of the hall at the time. Simon is out fox hunting, as one does in the middle of a stormy night, when his hounds pick up a scent and race through the dark in chase. Simon, mounted on horseback, pursues this bloodthirsty hunt through the woods of Wycoller. Eventually, the sly fox sees his chance and darts up through the gardens of the hall and through the front door. Still, I'm not quite sure what the door was doing open in the middle of the night, but stick with me on this one. The squire, still on horseback, is supercharged by this point. The hounds are quick on the fox's tail, snarling and snapping as they chase it through the door and up the staircase. Simon dutifully follows. He's still on horseback, but eager to gain victory over the fox. At this point, the legend splits in two. Both, however, involve the lady of the house, and both do not end well. One version is that the squire's wife, having been disturbed by the commotion in the hallway, comes from her bedchamber in complete panic. Her husband, irritated by her presence and lack of control, raises his riding crop in anger. With this, she passes out, dead. The second version, and this one sometimes involves the fox and sometimes it doesn't, sees the squire return home only to catch his wife in her bedchamber with another man. In a furious rage, he murders her and flees from the hall, still on horseback. Pick which story you prefer. Let me know in the comments. Multiple sightings have taken place over the years of the squire's ghost, which is mostly seen at night and dressed in early Stuart costume. Once a year during stormy weather and when darkness has fallen, blood-curdling screams are said to be heard coming from the direction of the hall. This is often accompanied by the crack of a whip and the echo of hooves galloping away. Visitors have also reported the sound of a horse riding through the village, and in particular over Packhorse Bridge, only to discover that there is nothing there. It's a fascinating story, and if either events did happen, it could explain the hall's future series of unfortunate events. But, historically, there is no evidence of a Simon Cunliffe, nor of a murder taking place at the hall, unless it was covered up. Next up, and said to haunt the area in vengeance towards her lover, is the ghost of Black Bess. Bess has been spotted near to the water's edge in the village, but is most commonly sighted around the ruins of the hall, her favourite spots being near the fireplace in the main area. Bess, it seems, is the typical jilted bride ghost, and the story of her haunting begins when one of the Cunliffes visits Jamaica. Here he falls in love and marries Bess, a West Indian woman. In newly married excitement, he began the voyage back to England with her. But somewhere along the way, he gets the jitters. With deep regret for his hasty marriage, he saw no option but to have his new bride thrown overboard. The squire continued his crossing without her, or so he thought, because the legend tells us that Bess's body may have been thrown into the dark waters, but her spirit remained with her husband, and she followed him all the way back to Wycoller, as initially promised on their wedding day. Bess has appeared to a number of witnesses in Wycoller, who mostly report her to be dressed in black silks, appearing lost. She never speaks, and is sighted often near the water's edge. Does Bess's spirit use water to travel through space and time, from the sea and into the Wycoller Beck? Let me know in the comments what you think. Not specifically a ghost, but more of a legend from folklore, the next to be feared during a visit to Wycoller is the devil dog, or Gytrash Padfoot, as also known. The Gytrash is a legendary shapeshifter said to haunt lonely roads awaiting travellers. Appearing usually in the shape of an animal, the Gytrash wanders alone, its aim to lead people astray or forewarn of a death. In the case of Wycoller, the Gytrash is most commonly spotted in the form of a large black dog known as Gytrash Padfoot. Importantly enough, it is another old rumour that fascinated Charlotte Brontë too, as she also wrote about it in Jane Eyre. This phantom black dog reportedly haunts the lanes with its burning red saucer-sized eyes and shrieking blood-curdling cries. Its appearance is said to be a warning of the impending death of a relative or friend, and any attempt to interfere with it is believed to be fatal. So if you're planning on visiting the area and you hear the snarl of a dog behind you, be careful, it may just be the guy trash. Aside from the popular sightings, this whole area is renowned for hauntings. Could the bricks from the hall be cursed after all? Past residents at the Pearson house believe so, as reports of a blue lady floating through the walls into an adjoining house have been made. More recently, a resident poltergeist is said to have terrified its inhabitants so much in one of the cottages that they chose to leave. The village tea room is also now closed, but more stories emerge of an eerie feeling in parts of that building too. Whatever you believe, the place certainly does have an essence of charm and mystery. If ghosts are real, I imagine it would be a spot just perfect for them to roam. It's a beautiful place to explore, and a deep part of me wishes it remains this way, lost and a part of the forest forever. If you have a story of Wycoller, we'd love to hear it. Please drop it down in the comments below or contact us on social media. Thanks for watching.